Congress just made a move that could completely change how gun owners deal with the NFA, and most people haven't realized it yet. Starting this month, NFA registration rules may no longer apply the way they used to, and if you own or plan to own NFA-regulated firearms, this affects you directly. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what Congress said, what it really means, and what every gun owner needs to know right now. Welcome to Justice Gun Law, where we cut through the noise and explain your gun rights clearly, legally, and without fear. Before we go any further, if you're a gun owner who cares about staying legal and protecting your rights, hit subscribe. Justice Gun Law covers real updates from Congress, courts, and federal agencies, so you're never caught off guard by sudden changes like this. And make sure notifications are on, because these rules can change fast. Congress just told the Attorney General to stop enforcing NFA registration. And what's happening right now could dismantle nearly a century of federal gun control. I'm talking about suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns. Items that have required federal registration since 1934, potentially becoming completely deregulated within months. If you're not subscribed to this channel, you need to hit that button right now because this situation is moving fast and you don't want to miss what happens next. What's in these letters could change everything. So, let's break down exactly what Congress is demanding and why the constitutional foundation for NFA registration just collapsed. The tax elimination that changed everything. On July 4th, 2024, something happened that most people completely missed in the chaos of a 1,000-page spending bill. Section 70,436 quietly reduced the NFA tax stamp from $200 to $0 for suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and short-barreled shotguns. That $200 tax has remained unchanged since 1934, 90 years without adjustment. If that tax had kept pace with inflation, it would cost $4,600 today. The government was essentially charging you nearly $5,000 in real purchasing power just to exercise a constitutional right, and they justified it by calling it a tax. For decades, Americans paid this fee over 15 million times, generating hundreds of millions in revenue, while creating a massive federal registry of gun owners. The ATF processed roughly 2.5 million Form 4 applications in 2023 alone, each one taking an average of 200 days to approve. But here's what nobody realized when that tax dropped to zero. The entire legal foundation for requiring any of that just disappeared. The Supreme Court ruled in 1937 that registration was only constitutional because it supported tax collection. And now there's no tax to collect. The letter that demanded compliance. The members of Congress who actually wrote Section 70,436 didn't stay silent about what they intended. They sent formal letters directly to Attorney General Pam Bondi, laying out their position in language so clear that there's no room for misinterpretation. These weren't suggestions or polite requests. These were explicit instructions about how the Department of Justice should handle every single lawsuit challenging NFA registration. What makes this extraordinary is that Congress rarely intervenes this directly in ongoing litigation. The signatories include committee chairmen and senior members with real legislative power, people who control budgets and oversight of the very agencies being told to stand down. The letter specifically references the Sinsky Supreme Court case from 1937, the same case the government has used for decades to justify mandatory registration. By citing it themselves, Congress is using the government's own legal precedent against them. They're saying the courts already decided this question 90 years ago. Registration only works if there's a tax, and you eliminated the tax, so registration has to go. The DOJ now faces an impossible choice. Follow congressional intent and abandon registration requirements or fight Congress in court while defending a position that contradicts the legislative branch's stated purpose. The legal theory is one thing, but the number of lawsuits already in motion makes this a powder keg about to explode. The litigation tsunami already underway. Right now, there are at least 8 major federal lawsuits challenging various aspects of NFA registration, and every single one of them just got handed nuclear ammunition. Gun Owners of America filed what they're calling the One Big Beautiful lawsuit, specifically targeting registration requirements for zero tax items. The Firearms Policy Coalition has three separate cases moving through different circuit courts. These aren't small cases filed by individual gun owners. These are massive organizational efforts backed by millions in legal funding and expert constitutional attorneys. The Fifth Circuit alone, which has been increasingly hostile to gun regulations after Bruin, could issue a ruling that affects 37 million people across multiple states. Judges rely heavily on legislative history and congressional intent when interpreting statutes. And now there's a formal letter saying registration should not exist. Some legal experts are estimating that if just one appellate court rules that registration is unconstitutional for zero tax items, it could invalidate 8.2 million existing registrations overnight. That's not counting the estimated 2 million people per year who would no longer need to register going forward. The ATF currently has 2,800 employees dedicated to processing NFA paperwork, running background checks, and maintaining the registry. An entire bureaucracy that might become obsolete if these cases succeed. But while the courts decide legal theories, something bizarre is happening at gun stores and manufacturers right now. The market chaos nobody's talking about. Suppressor manufacturers shipped 2.66 million units in 2023, the highest number in history. And every single one required a $200 tax stamp and months of waiting. Now, those same manufacturers are sitting on inventory worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and nobody knows what rules will apply next month. The industry generated $1.4 billion in suppressor sales last year alone. And that doesn't count short-barreled rifles or shotguns. If registration requirements vanish, analysts predict the market could triple in size within 2 years because the barrier to entry drops to zero. Right now, buying a suppressor means finding a dealer with a Class 3 license, filling out ATF Form 4, getting photographed, getting fingerprinted, waiting 200 days on average, and hoping you don't move to a different state before approval comes through. Remove all of that and suppressors become as easy to buy as any other firearm accessory. Some manufacturers are already ramping up production in anticipation, building new factory space and hiring workers. The economics are chaotic, but the constitutional argument that nobody's discussing might be the most important part of this entire situation. The Supreme Court precedent that kills registration. Sinsky v. United States in 1937 wasn't really about gun rights at all. It was about whether Congress could use taxation as a regulatory tool. The Supreme Court ruled that yes, Congress can tax things heavily to discourage behavior, and yes, they can require registration to enforce that tax. That decision has been cited in literally hundreds of cases over the past 87 years to justify all kinds of federal regulations. But here's what's critical about that ruling. The court specifically said registration was constitutional because it was an appropriate means of enforcing the collection of revenue, not public safety, not crime prevention. Revenue collection. The entire legal justification was financial, not regulatory. Fast forward to today, and there's no revenue to collect. The tax is zero. By the Supreme Court's own logic in Sinsky, the registration requirement just lost its constitutional foundation. Legal scholars are calling this a self-executing repeal, meaning the law automatically becomes unenforceable when its constitutional justification disappears. The government can't argue public safety now because they never argued it before. Some attorneys are comparing this to prohibition. When the 21st Amendment repealed the 18th, all the enforcement laws became void automatically. Nobody had to file lawsuits or wait for court rulings. The ATF's existential crisis. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has 11 total employees and an annual budget of $1.7 billion. A substantial portion of that budget and workforce exists solely to administer the National Firearms Act. The NFA division processes millions of forms, conducts hundreds of thousands of background checks, maintains a registry of every legally owned suppressor and short-barreled weapon in America, and conducts compliance inspections on tens of thousands of dealers. If registration disappears for the most commonly registered items, roughly 40% of the ATF's workload vanishes overnight. Government agencies don't voluntarily shrink. They fight for survival. The ATF has already issued internal guidance telling field agents to continue processing forms and enforcing registration requirements despite the tax elimination. They're acting as if nothing changed, even though the constitutional justification for their authority just disappeared. Some people are registering suppressors out of caution. Others are refusing, betting that courts will side with Congress. The ATF is caught between congressional intent, court challenges, and their own institutional interest in maintaining power. The question isn't whether the ATF wants to keep registration. Of course they do. This is the most significant Second Amendment development in nearly a century. And how the DOJ responds in the next few weeks will determine whether millions of Americans regain rights that were stripped away in 1934. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now because when the DOJ makes their decision, this channel will be the first to break down exactly what it means for. So here's the bottom line. This isn't just another headline. It's a potential turning point for NFA regulation, and what happens next matters. We'll continue tracking every update from Congress, the ATF, and the courts, and we'll explain exactly how it affects lawful gun owners like you. If this video helped you understand what's really going on, give it a like. It helps more gun owners find accurate information. Drop your questions in the comments, and we may cover them in the next video. This is Justice Gun Law. Know the law, protect your rights, and stay informed.